The weight of self-reproach is not just a passing emotion. It is a slow, corrosive force that can erode both mental and physical well-being, leaving behind damage that is often invisible but deeply impactful. Many people underestimate the long-term effects of excessive guilt and self-blame, dismissing them as temporary states of mind. However, when left unchecked, these feelings can spiral into chronic anxiety, depression, and even physical illness. The cycle of self-recrimination is not just mentally exhausting. It is a silent killer, an invisible force that steadily drains a person's ability to function, stripping away self-esteem, happiness, and ultimately, the will to move forward. People who constantly berate themselves for past mistakes or perceived failures often find themselves trapped in a vicious cycle of regret. At first, it may seem like a form of self-discipline, a way to hold oneself accountable. But over time, this habit morphs into an unhealthy fixation, one that poisons the mind and body. Chronic stress caused by guilt triggers the release of cortisol, a stress hormone that, in excess, weakens the immune system, disrupts sleep, and contributes to a range of health issues, from hypertension to digestive problems. The longer one remains in this state, the harder it becomes to break free. The brain, conditioned to dwell on negativity, begins to operate in a loop of self-destruction, making even minor mistakes feel like catastrophic failures. Mental health deteriorates rapidly under the weight of self-reproach. Anxiety and depression often take root in those who struggle with chronic guilt, turning daily life into an exhausting battle. The mind becomes a prison, where every thought is a reminder of inadequacy and every decision is second-guessed into oblivion. The inability to forgive oneself fosters self-doubt, making it difficult to take risks or make meaningful progress in life. Opportunities are lost, relationships suffer, and isolation becomes an ever-present reality. Many who fall into this cycle find themselves withdrawing from social interactions, believing they are unworthy of love, friendship, or success. They may sabotage their own achievements, convinced that they do not deserve happiness. In the worst cases, prolonged self-reproach leads to self-destructive behaviors, including substance abuse or even suicidal thoughts. The physical toll of this mental burden is equally alarming. Chronic stress associated with self-blame disrupts sleep patterns, leading to insomnia or restless nights plagued by rumination. The body remains in a constant state of fight or flight, even when there is no immediate threat. This prolonged state of hyperarousal weakens the cardiovascular system, increases the risk of heart disease, and accelerates the aging process. People who are consumed by guilt often experience persistent fatigue, headaches, muscle tension, and digestive problems, all symptoms of a body that is being worn down from within. The more a person internalizes guilt, the more they unknowingly inflict damage upon their own health, turning an emotional struggle into a full-blown physiological crisis. Beyond the individual, self-reproach can have a devastating impact on personal and professional relationships. Those who constantly blame themselves for every conflict or failure often become emotionally unavailable, afraid to engage with others out of fear of disappointing them. They may push people away, convinced that they are a burden, or they may become overly apologetic, unable to assert their own needs or boundaries. This dynamic creates imbalance in relationships, fostering resentment and misunderstandings. Over time, friendships fade, romantic relationships break down, and the individual finds themselves increasingly isolated. At work, excessive self-criticism can lead to burnout, as people overcompensate by working harder, striving for impossible perfection, and ultimately exhausting themselves in pursuit of unattainable standards. Many people who struggle with self-reproach are unaware of its deeper roots. It is often not just about a single mistake or failure, but a mindset shaped by past experiences. Perfectionism plays a significant role, with those who set unrealistically high standards for themselves suffering the most when they inevitably fall short. Societal pressure further exacerbates this issue, as individuals compare themselves to carefully curated images of success, constantly feeling inadequate. Childhood experiences also contribute. People who grew up in environments where they were harshly criticized or made to feel they were never good enough often carry these wounds into adulthood, replaying the same toxic narratives in their own minds. Breaking free from this cycle is not easy. It requires a conscious effort to rewire thought patterns, to challenge ingrained beliefs about self-worth, and to recognize that mistakes do not define a person's entire existence. It is crucial to develop self-compassion, to understand that imperfection is an inevitable part of life. Learning to let go of the past does not mean disregarding responsibility. It means accepting that no amount of guilt will change what has already happened. Instead of dwelling on regret, the focus must shift to growth, to making better choices in the present rather than punishing oneself for the past. However, many people struggle to reach this point on their own. The longer self-reproach persists, the deeper it takes root, making it nearly impossible to escape without intervention. Therapy, mindfulness practices, and cognitive behavioral techniques can help break the cycle, but only if the individual recognizes the need for change. Unfortunately, many refuse to seek help, believing they deserve their suffering, further reinforcing their own destructive patterns. The danger lies in waiting too long. What begins as a habit of self-criticism can escalate into something far more dangerous, leading to severe mental health conditions, chronic illness, or even self-harm. The most important realization is that guilt, while natural, should never become a permanent state of being. Life is a series of missteps and corrections, and no one is immune to making mistakes. But when self-reproach turns into a relentless internal punishment, it ceases to be productive and instead becomes a form of self-destruction. The longer one remains trapped in this mindset, the more difficult it becomes to escape. And if left unchecked, it can consume a person entirely, leaving behind only regret and a life half lived.